The president got it out of the hole for me. He signed the flag. Everybody signed the flag, and it was pretty neat.
Did he ask for your vote on immigration reform in return?
Actually, I told him since I'd made a hole-in-one, he ought to give us everything we want on entitlement reform.
Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss hit a hole-in-one with President Obama this week. So will a little golf and Washington gridlock? We'll get to that in a moment. First, let's introduce our next roundtable. George Will and John Carl are back with Democratic strategist Donna Brazile, ABC's Matthew Dowd, and former Senator from Maine, Olympia Snowe. Welcome to all of you. I want to start with you, George Will, and the IRS. What a week for the IRS. Look at these headlines. IRS targeted Tea Party groups for scrutiny, searching words like patriot, Tea Party. Does this sound like a familiar story to you, George Will?
Mr. Hicks, when he was in Libya, said his jaw dropped at the explanation back here. This was a jaw-dropping moment. In response to a question at an American Bar Association convention, a second-level IRS person said, oh, yeah, by the way, we did target these people. Not progressive.
Which apparently they've known about for a while.
Oh, the Tea Party people have known about this and have been working on this.
And the IRS.
But they said, A, it was inadvertent, or just some odd underlings out in Cincinnati who did this. And there was no political motive whatever involved. Now, the question is, how stupid do they think we are? Just imagine, Donna Brazile, if the George W. Bush administration had an IRS underlings, out in Cincinnati, of course, saying, we're going to target groups with the word progressive in their title. We would have all hell breaking loose. May I read you something from an ancient document?
Yes, you may. I would be surprised if you didn't.
This is the 40th anniversary of the Watergate summer here in Washington. He has, through his subordinates and agents, endeavored to cause, in violation of the constitutional rights of citizens, income tax audits or other income tax investigations to be initiated or conducted in a discriminatory manner. Section 1, Article 2, the impeachment articles of Richard Nixon.
Over to you, Donna Brazile.
I think it would be irresponsible to start talking about impeachment over this, but yet I believe the IG for Tax Administration will release a report this week. There's already been some leaked documents. Clearly, there was some incompetence at some level of bureaucrats looking into all of these applications, coming in a rush after Citizens United to see whether or not they were legitimate organizations with the word Tea Party or patriot in it. Yeah, they are progressive patriots as well. But the truth is that this was something that should have been revealed, should have been told. There were numerous congressional hearings. No one came forth. This IRS official, Ms. Lerner, put it out there. Now let's see what the investigation
Why
will
wasn't
hold.
it revealed long ago? Well, apparently they've known about it.
It's amazing, and we know that IRS leadership, at least I am told, in Washington knew about this last year, and yet the commissioner of the IRS testified that he had no idea and no information that this was going on. But I think that given what George has just said, you better get ready for your audit.
The IRS commissioner was a Republican appointed by Bush, who, his term expired in November. There's a vacancy currently at the IRS in terms of the head of the IRS.
Senator Snowe, does this go away?
No, it doesn't until it's resolved and get to the heart of the matter. Because, the IRS obviously has sweeping powers. And the fact that it had gone on so long, it wasn't disclosed or revealed in any way, and it actually was denied. When the former commissioner came...
He testified and said, no, we're not.
He specifically asked. And many attempts by members of Congress to raise these issues that they were specifically targeted. And they said no.
You're smiling, Matt.
Well, because I think this
because you know you're not going to get audited.
Well, then go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have enough for them to mess with anyway. Everything about this is so typical Washington and so typical partisan on each side of this. There's a great quote by Napoleon who says, never ascribe to malice that which can be easily attributed to incompetence. And every time something like this happens, and I'm not saying there's not stuff involved in here that has to be explained and all that, and Benghazi to me is another example, is we jump to scandal long before we settle on stupidity. And each of these, there's things involved, they shouldn't have done certain things, but I'm amazed at a situation where there's constant, especially on the Republican and conservative side of this, who constantly say, government's incompetent, government can't do anything, they don't know what they're doing, but oh, by the way, if Barack Obama wants to make it work badly on their behalf, they can do it really well and really effectively.
Which is a perfect transition to what kind of week we've had. We saw the hole-in-one with Saxby Chambliss. We saw him out there with President Obama. I want to start with you, Senator Snowe, on this. You are the author of the book Fighting for Common Ground. You say the Senate was no longer a legislative body where the key issues facing the country could be resolved. The Senate as a whole simply was not doing the job granted to it under the Constitution. First of all, it caused you to leave the Senate, and what can we do about the problems we're having now?
Well, I left
Does
the
the hole-in-one make a difference?
To some it probably really does, for golfers. But I think it's important for the president to build those relationships, I should say. But I decided to take my fight outside of the Senate. I wasn't leaving the fight, but rather taking a different direction on the outside to affirm people's views. One, about the disturbing partisanship and polarization that exists in the Congress. The only way we're going to change it is placing a premium and value in bipartisanship and compelling people to come together. And that means providing a political reward. And through the Bipartisan Policy Center, where I'm a senior fellow, we're launching tomorrow a Common Ground project in conjunction with Citizens for Political Reform, so it can serve as a catalyst for real-time involvement, drawing people into the process and making and holding members of Congress accountable for reaching agreement and common ground options.
Do you see that working, George Will?
No, and I'm not sure I want it to work. I think Senator Snowe on that side of the table and I on this side represent a fundamental divide for 230-some years in this country. There are those.
I'm not that old.
Maybe combined with the whole table.
Stay here a little while longer.
I think Senator Snowe wishes the American people were less cynical about Washington and more trusting. With regard to our last topic of the IRS, I wish Americans were less trusting of government than they are. We wouldn't have the large, sprawling government, which by its very size guarantees the kind of gridlock that Senator Snowe dislikes.
Let's take a leap forward here in our last topic here. 2016. We certainly heard about Benghazi. This weekend we had Senator Rand Paul in Iowa. We had Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal in New Hampshire. And this we heard from Governor Chris Christie.
Yes.
I did this for myself, my wife, and my children. And unlike some of you, they will still pay attention to me whether I run for president or not.
I'm rooting for
You buy that one, Matt?
Well,
You've run presidential
the timing of
campaigns.
this is awful curious because I don't think he gained weight after he became governor of New Jersey and then decided it's time to lose weight. You take his explanation as valid as what he says. I think so much of what's going on now, with the presidential campaign in 2016, started right after November 2012. That's when the presidential election for 2016. And to me, all of this, so much of this discussion, the release of the ad on Benghazi, has to do with 2016 and try to hurt Hillary Clinton. All of the things, the scandals that we're talking about, all have to do with 2016. The interesting thing to me is if Hillary Clinton doesn't run, this will be the first time in more than a generation where both parties have no heir apparent to run in this office, for this office. Before 1960, since 1960, this hasn't happened before. That's why everything you're seeing is about 2016.
I want to go back to Chris Christie for a moment. Would Americans have to have someone who wasn't overweight?
You know,
so much of America is overweight.
More than a third of Americans consider themselves, overweight, more than a third obese. We all struggle with our weight. George, I know you haven't struggled. I haven't seen you for 40 years and you ain't struggled with much. But the truth is that I'm rooting for him. I think he's doing the right thing, not just for his health, his family, whether it's 2016 and he's shaping up for that. It humanizes him, but it also gives him an opportunity to share with the American people, like Bill Clinton, when he ran for president, who was struggling with his weight. He was one happy meal away from, being overweight. Mike Huckabee, who struggled with his weight. This will give him an opportunity to talk to the American people about a subject that we should all talk about, our own health.
John Carl, is Hillary hurt?
Well, look, the Republicans are already treating Hillary like she is the Democratic nominee in 2016.
And Joe Biden's having a great time for himself.
He's trying to, I'm over here, I'm Joe Biden, I'm here. But look, we've seen 2 ads last week from Republican groups, video ads attacking Hillary Clinton. These are the earliest attack ads we have seen, I think, ever in a presidential
But we've said
campaign.
it's a long way away. Does that issue fade? Or is this going to be a central issue if Hillary Clinton?
Look, the idea that we can say right now what's going to be a central issue in three and a half years, there's no way. But I do believe that we will see that clip in one form or another in political attack ads in the 2016
I just think it undermines, what it really does is undermines her, not only with the general electorate, because it's just like, here we go again. I think it actually, Democrats start to say, like, do we want to relitigate all of the stuff that we had from the 90s from her husband? Because here we go, we have another thing. The only thing I counsel is Republicans better be careful what they wish for, because every time they say, oh, Hillary Clinton's stout, Hillary Clinton's, as of right now, she's strong, but you get rid of her and Joe Biden has a hard time going anywhere, a new candidate could emerge, and that could be even harder to beat than Hillary Clinton. So be careful what you wish for.
And Martha, I just would say on this whole issue regarding Hillary and, of course, on Benghazi, is that Republicans could overplay their hand. We can't be viewed as doing this for political reasons, but rather trying to get at the truth. This should be a bipartisan effort on both sides, frankly. Both Democrats and Republicans ought to get to the heart of the matter, what transpired in Benghazi, why were there serious lapse in security, and measures were not put in place, and to respond to those issues.
I want to very quickly here at the end, we just have a couple of minutes, talk about this week's hearings on military sexual assault. Mm-hmm. It is an unbelievable problem, and I'm just going to say right now, I've heard for 20 years officials at the Pentagon say they have zero tolerance for this, and it's worse than ever. Matt, you have a son who served.
I had a son who served in the Army and who was in Iraq for almost 18 months. It's a problem, and it's a systematic problem. He talks about it. He talks about it. He talked about it. It goes on all the time. To me, on today's Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day to you, Martha, and all the other mothers. To me, there's a quote that Dostoevsky said: "Is how we treat our prisoners is how civilized society is." To me, it's how we treat women is how civilized our society is. And when we allow this, and we allow abuse at many different levels in things, we don't report it, police don't investigate it. What we've seen that came out of Cleveland, actually, where the guy had a history of abuse that nothing was ever done about, and then look what happened. The military has not dealt with this.
Just a couple of seconds here, George.
That said, all of which I agree with, still, when you have a 37% increase from one year to another, something has changed also in the reporting of this, and that's part of the story.
Martha,
you also got to look at alcohol, I think. I think that's something else that you have to look at, and whether that is a contributing factor, and I'm sure they'll look at that as they go forward and try to finally fix this problem. Mm-hmm. Senator Snowe is sticking around to answer your questions for our Web Extra.